Hello, everybody, and today's ramble will be a review of the Democratic National Convention, Night 2 for 2020. And, yeah. There's a bit of this I'm going to have to do in a separate episode because I did get worked up about it, and it deserves its own episode, but just to get this off my plate, I'll give you the entire recap of how I felt through the thing. First thing I noticed was they added a sign language interpreter because I guess the first night they didn't need one, but the second night they do. Maybe there was closed captioning that they had pre-done for the first night. I don't know, but this time maybe they had more live people, and so they didn't have time to close caption it, so they just brought out a sign language interpreter. But, you know, it's always a good sign as far as progressive values to see that sort of inclusivity. I wonder if the Republican National Convention will follow suit. I think I'm going to watch that and tell you guys how I felt about it as well. First, we started with this guy talking about Milwaukee. Don't know who he was because I was watching the feed from the Joe Biden YouTube channel rather than the MSNBC YouTube channel because I didn't want interruptions by the organization that was rebroadcasting it, like I got for the first night, because I don't care about their commentary as much as I care about my own feelings first. I don't want to be told what to think. So, The guy who, whatever his name was, he was cut off at the beginning. He said, unlike the president, we never called 9/11, unlike the president, we never called COVID-19 a hoax. I'm so used to calling out people who called 9/11 a hoax. But yeah, he said, unlike the president, we never called COVID-19 a hoax. And then he was really making good points, and that one landed on me right from the get-go. So we had a good start to the night, right? Then we had the presidential committee report, the credentials committee report, where they approved the credentials. Now, as a former delegate, I'm used to this sort of thing happening, you know, at the county, precinct, congressional, and state level. I've never been to the DNC, you know, and COVID-19 really dashed my hopes of that ever happening this year. So, but as a delegate, I'm used to this, right? But this is a different animal. This is not the sort of thing where you can have people breaking off into groups talking about things. You can't have the people in the audience trying to win over the person next to them by, you know, discussing something. And so, like, why are they approving credentials? There's no meeting, really. This is a presentation. So it was really, really strange to me, because it's not even like it's like an interactive Zoom meeting or anything like that where people could raise their hands. It's just a TV show at this point. So they had Jim Roosevelt and Lorraine Miller. They approved all the credentials. Yay! The whole process for how the delegates were chosen, I found out after the show, was actually pretty screwed up, whereas it concerns Colorado, because, Bernie Sanders won in Colorado and should have had more delegates sent than Joe Biden, but when Bernie suspended his campaign, he gave over control over who was going to get picked to become delegates. And so, you know, they quote-unquote sent a whole bunch of already in place state party officials, like the governor, Jared Polis, and others. They just, people who already have office. And this pisses me off a lot. People who already have either a really high office, like the governor, or even lower level offices are getting sent to the DNC rather than regular people. When it comes down to it, it's like a resume builder for them. But if you look at all of the different assemblies that one would have to go to in political years, that's a whole bunch of time being spent away from their office where they could be doing good work. And right now we've got, the Rona and the pandemic, the economy, stuff that I'd rather have people who are already in office doing. Let some other passionate people go to the DNC. Now, I guess it doesn't matter this year because it's just kind of like in name only, because nobody actually went to Milwaukee. So, did they get to vote on procedures, agenda, or officers? I don't know. That stuff was all really behind the scenes to anyone who would have wanted to watch. It's not. There's no transparency when you don't have this physical meeting. Only the people who would have been dubbed delegates, those are the people who get to see and participate. So, the next part of the show, anyway, it was Maria Cardona and Barney Frank. They're the Rules Committee, and they already approved and ratified last July the procedure, officers, and agenda, right? Now, this is a part where, like in night one, where my complaint about my review of that was that there was no procedure to it, right? There's no us hearing anything about Robert's rules of order. There's no element of somebody possibly bringing up something that needs the attention of that entire convention, right? If it weren't for that type of procedure, we never would have had President Ronald Reagan. If it wasn't for actually having a convention and having rules to how it was conducted, there's a lot of things that we would not have. And by getting rid of that opportunity for grassroots efforts to be heard, it really cements the status quo, right? Just like picking all the delegates to be people who already hold political office and have already climbed up the political ladder, so to speak. So when they said that they approved the procedures last July, I was like, well, this is the first I'm hearing of it. They approved all the officers and the agenda and everything. I was like, are you going to present the agenda that you approved? This is the platform that we're all supposed to be signing on for. So I did, right in the middle of the show, paused it because, it's a YouTube stream. And I went and I looked at the Democratic Party website. Quick Google search, I could find the agenda. It's right there, right? At least it's there online. You can look at it. But seriously, like, we should be seeing how the votes for each of those agenda positions fell. How popular were they when they passed? Who the fuck knows? There's no fucking transparency to it, right? At least we get to see the agenda items that made it. But if there was actual procedure to this convention, another agenda item could have been added last night. Goddamn train. Shut up. So, they did talk about a resolution about improving the nominating procedure, and they were going to review this by March 21st, 2021, right? And they said that they were going to get rid of caucuses and go to primaries, right? Now, my state has kind of halfway gotten rid of caucuses. For presidential purposes, we have just the popular vote. And then we're supposed to have delegates assigned to the candidates based on the popular vote. Now, what pissed me off about this is later on, the delegate counts was given in the roll call, and that's not the case. That's not what happened. Right? And so this resolution actually to investigate, to improve the nominating procedure, this is not something that would have helped Biden this year. This would have hurt him if there was actually just primaries, no caucus procedure to it. And, even what really hurt Bernie Sanders was the drawn-out nature of each state having its primary on a different day. If they all voted on the same day, you wouldn't have the votes from one state affecting other states. Because there are a lot of people who, instead of looking at policy, they look at who was popular in the last couple votes in the last couple states. So the votes of the anyways, I'm getting off topic. Right? This is... Anyways, that was the only agenda position or the agenda item that was mentioned in the entire broadcast. Right? The rest of the agenda, if you want to find out, it's right there on the website. So then Julie Chavez Rodriguez and Dennis McDonough, they were the platform committee members, and while they were talking, I was looking at the DNC's website just to find out what the actual agenda was. Then after that, there was this awkward dead space on the broadcast. It was just black, except for the sign language interpreter, who just kind of... I thought that was funny. They didn't black her out, fade her away, at least for awkward dead space. They did a Pledge of Allegiance with a lot of regular folks. Unlike the way that they pick delegates, they like to pick regular folks for their presentations for a broadcast. Then there was a video montage of former keynote DNC speeches, and it had a lot of Barack Obama in it. This year, the keynote speech was shared with a whole bunch of Democrats in lesser positions, like state legislature and whatnot. And then they were talking about the issues for a few minutes, which is good because some of those issues were actually in the approved agenda. But then they started talking about the whole lifespan of Joe Biden, and then they started talking about policy and what Democrats care about. But I really wondered, what was the speech writing process like? If they had all these keynote speakers, who was the speech writer? Was it all of the speakers? Because it seemed to have this really good narrative flow to it. It wasn't so much a compromise between all those speakers. It was written by one person who just had all of them read it, the whole thing, and then took video clips of each person finishing each other's sentences. So that it looked like there was this shared keynote speech, but there was really a narrative to it that was coherent, way more coherent than you would get if a whole bunch of people, especially politicians, had to divvy up how they were going to spend their own time in the keynote speech. If they each got a minute, it would sound totally different. So I really wonder what the speech writing process was for that. How they let them know what they were going to be saying. So then we had Tracy Ellis Ross. She kind of was the host of the show, like Eva Longoria was for night 1, she was on night 2. And she was talking about Joe and Kamala, and then racial justice in her stuff. And so this theme of everything being tied to racial justice has been following us from night 1. It's on to night 2. There was an old Joe Biden stump speech footage from like earlier in the campaign where there was actually people around him. That's, remember back when we could have crowds, but basically that was my feeling when I was watching it, was like, that was when people were thinking maybe we should stop having public speeches so much, with this Rona thing we've heard about happening in China, and we've already had like 2 or 3 cases in America. Maybe we should slow down on this, Back from, way back when, earlier this year. Then they had Sally Yates, and she was the Attorney General, like, for the first 10 days of Trump's administration. And then she stood up to the Muslim travel ban, and then she got fired. And so, she had served for other administrations as well in other capacities, but she was the acting AG when Trump took over. And I was just left wondering, like, how many people that Trump has fired could they roll out in the Democratic National Convention throughout all the nights? How many people that he's pissed off can they just roll out without, like, actually having the show feel like it was taken over by people who weren't even Democrats? Because, like, the night before we had John Kasich, who was, running to be the Republican nominee. He was, vastly defeated by the incumbent, Donald Trump. He got, like, 1 delegate, I think. But, his gripes against Trump are, worthy of being put in the DNC. I don't know why. To get Trump to tweet a whole bunch from his toilet, I don't know. Then there was Senator Chuck Schumer. I thought it was powerful when he said that Trump hid in a bunker while Americans were being tear gassed. And that was talking about the photo op that he had right next to that church that's next to the White House, And so he held the Bible up, and in order to clear the street for that, he actually tear gassed protesters. And that's the America we live in now. I think Chuck Schumer's inclusion of that was a really good sticking point, but also when he said broadband for every city in all of the different policy things that he said, that stood out to me because I love the internet. You're getting a high def video for me because broadband is so good where I'm at, so I'm all for broadband. I could be a remote worker if there was good broadband signal everywhere. I'm a telehealth worker. I could be camping if there was good telehealth. If there was good broadband that could handle me, conferencing with a whole group of people, I could be a telehealth worker. So yeah. Here's hoping. Progress. Then they had Caroline Kennedy talking about Joe Biden. We had Jimmy Carter's wife, and then Jimmy Carter's voice. I didn't see him on video, and I was like, this is a bit morbid, but I'm like, this is the convention. If you're going to be heard, I should be able to see you, because I want to know how Father Time has treated you. Give me that morbid curiosity at least to be able to see how skeletal you look now. Like who followed him right after, Bill Clinton, I was like, oh my God, he's getting so skinny. He looks, so pale. His hair's all white. I want to see that. It's the convention. I should be able to get a little glimpse. But Bill Clinton, he said, COVID hit us much more than it had to. And a president doesn't say it is what it is. And I felt like he had a whole slew of good zingers. And so he's always been a good speaker. Anyways, the roll call happened. Then Tom Perez was talking from Wisconsin about Wisconsin. And it just reminded me of how Hillary ignored Wisconsin. And so they put the DNC, so it was supposed to happen in Milwaukee, and now they're just going to keep mentioning Wisconsin to, make sure they cover that Wisconsin base. Then they had Bob King and AOC nominating Bernie Sanders. And they each got like a 1-minute speech. But it felt a little bit useless because it's in the middle of basically a coronation where we already know that it's all about Joe Biden. This whole show has been about Joe Biden, Joe Biden, Joe Biden. It hasn't been about the process at all. It's all been we love Joe Biden love fest, and they're just kind of going through the motions, But those motions are kind of important to the people who have like this grieving process that they need to go through, like me, that Bernie didn't win. At least it recognizes that he was in the race. Then, just to make Joe Biden look a little bit more like, an everyman, kind of like how they brought out the train that he rode for 30 years and kept in contact with the train workers. The person that nominated Joe to begin with was Jacqueline Brittany, who is an elevator operator. Because apparently he had really deep connections with her going up and down in the congressional buildings in the elevator. It felt fake and plastic. I get it. It was horrible. But he's trying to show that he is representing the everyman. Then it was Senator Chris Coons and Representative Lisa Blunt Rochester who also nominated him. I think, like, officially, because, like, maybe the elevator operator, she was just, like, there for show, not for real, but, like a ceremonial nomination. Then there was, like, a tribute to John Lewis on the Edmund Pettus Bridge from Alabama. And then, like, I noticed that, we're actually in the roll call part of it. And they're going to start reading the votes. And so, like, each state had their people representing them in front of something that was, like, representing their state, which, is different from the regular convention scene. Normally it's just they're around the section of the crowd that they are, or they get on the stage, and they get in alphabetical order. And just to be able to do this, it reminds me of WrestleMania, actually, where the Undertaker on the first night of WrestleMania, as social distanced this year, his fight with AJ Styles was really choreographed and movie quality. It was like you were watching a movie, not like a wrestling match. It was like watching Roadhouse with Patrick Swayze more than WrestleMania. And they took the opportunity. If you're social distance, you might as well make the most of it. And so when they had this this opportunity to have everyone be represented by, some scene from their state, they took it. They made it special. And so I give them props for that. It's a special time. Make the best of it. Then they did the rest of the states. And this next part is what I'll be making a totally different video about. Outside of this, I really want to research it a little bit more. But basically, when it came to Colorado doing their roll call, the votes were 36 delegates for Bernie Sanders and 42 for Joe Biden. Except, being somebody who lives in Colorado, I know that Bernie Sanders won our primary. Right? And so that got me to looking at some of the other numbers. California happens just before Colorado. They read their delegate vote, and it looked like Joe Biden won their primary too, and he didn't. It was Bernie Sanders who won it. But the way that they've reallocated all the delegates in this entire roll call for all the states, added delegates to Joe Biden, which makes it look like this entire time there has been unity behind everybody wanting to vote for Joe Biden, when really Joe Biden was like 10th on everyone's list, right? And if we had a fair nominating process where outside influences couldn't affect it as much, and there was less corporate lobbying involved in our politics, and the pandemic putting a squeeze on Bernie Sanders to where, in the case of Wisconsin, he had to choose whether he wanted his own followers to show up in person to vote and possibly catch the coronavirus and die, versus just suspending his campaign. He was actually put in that position of, if I don't drop out now, people are going to show up in person and some people are going to die because of me. Right? So, under such horrible outside influences, I don't think we've had a really good primary that process that happened. But what makes it worse is whitewashing all of the previous votes that happened even before Super Tuesday and on Super Tuesday, taking all of Bernie Sanders' wins and representing them as losses in the convention in order to look like all of the states were, unanimously voting for Joe Biden. No, that's not what happened. That's just how they decided to allocate the delegates, based on maybe other candidates had delegates that became unbound, or by virtue of them endorsing Joe Biden, then their delegates go to Joe Biden. However the rules for each state worked. And this is part of the corruption of our politics in the two-party system. And after I look at this a little bit more, I'm going to make a whole other video about how bad that was for me. It really took me out of the rest of the show, really. Delaware passed in the roll call, only to be called at the end because they were Joe Biden's home state, and the home state always wants to be the last one. And that was at least part of the normal convention experience, is that little bit of tradition. Then they had this really quick, really cheesy acceptance speech, which wasn't that many words. It was very short. It was like, I'll see you on Thursday. And then it looked like a drop ceiling with like office cubicles, square, that kind of cheap drop ceiling, and like balloons fell out of it. It looked like it was in an office, right? Well, later on in the show, I figured out what it was, and I'll bring it up then. But right after his acceptance speech, he put on a mask, and so did Jill, right next to him, and that was a message. That was definitely a political message, and unfortunately, what to do for our healthcare in a pandemic, what to do for to save everybody, has now become so politicized that it's a symbol of what team you're on. And I would just implore every Republican who wants to do the right thing for everyone's health and wear a mask, just put like a big Republican elephant on your mask. Like, get it embroidered, put, MAGA. I don't care. Just wear the fucking mask. If you think it's the wrong political statement to do, write whatever political statement you want. I support guns. Don't tread on me. I don't fucking care. Just wear a mask, please. Don't let one party make it their symbol of what they do so that you don't do it, because I just want more people to live. We can argue all the other stuff later. People not dying, that's where I'm at. Then there was a segment about the affordable health care, and I was like, oh, great work, except for affordable health care isn't universal or free at the point of service like that other candidate that we're not voting for now. But yeah, they put a segment about affordable healthcare in there. And then they had a more personal segment about this guy named Audie who had ALS and now speaks like Stephen Hawking's with a computer. And he ended his speech with a call to donate to Joe by texting some numbers to some numbers, and yeah. And then they had this guy, DeMarcus Gilliard. He was from the Marine Corps. He was talking about voting for Joe. Then John Kerry and his friendship with Joe. And John Kerry also talked about the Russian bounties on U.S. soldiers, which I haven't investigated that whole story completely as much as I want, but I'll say that it resonates with people on the fence who might vote Republican. If they're hearing his message and they're like, wait a second. If they're pro military, if they're maybe veterans themselves, they might think about that. And John Kerry being Purple Heart awardee, I think that might be the right person to bring that message across. There was a montage of Trump failing the country and the military right after that. Then there was a montage of Joe Biden's friendship with John McCain, which actually kind of landed for me because the time in my life when I was more right-leaning, I actually grew up in Arizona, where John McCain was a senator there. So, just to see that, like, this is, not about party so much right now. I think anyone who is an Arizona expat might have enjoyed it. I don't know how much of a voting block we make, but whatever. I liked it. And then there was this vignette of basically the story of how Joe met Jill. The love story, right? Really well produced, enjoyable watch. But Jill Biden's speech followed that. And just to look at the high school setting that she was speaking from the high school where she taught. But it was Brandywine High School. But just looking, the image of the high school says enough. Because anyone who's having their plans for how they're going back to school affected by the pandemic knows how a national response to this with some clarity would have been really nice, but we don't have a president who is a leader. You know? Let's see. Afterwards, there was this really awkward thing where, like, it's kind of like my work, with telehealth. I'm looking at boxes of people clapping, and they just kind of like piped in fake audience claps. But like really, when you're working with Zoom like that, you don't hear the claps like that. One clap kind of drowns out all the rest of them. So it's kind of fake, but it's kind of a sign of the times that all of the audience that were clapping were, social distance through a computer. But I don't know if they were watching or actually, or if it was like completely pre-taped. The whole thing is so plastic and staged at this point. We're only halfway through, right? Then there was John Legend, played some good music. I wasn't watching on MSNBC's rebroadcast, so I didn't have the song cut off at the end. So I was happy for that, because I'd rather listen to John Legend than Rachel Maddow on this particular night. Then there was a highlight reel at the end, and if you're watching me to get like the whole convention like in a nutshell, and then I'm talking for like 30 minutes, where I'm talking way more than this highlight reel was. Like if you're watching me and you're wanting to get just the stone skinny of it, forget it. Just go to the actual broadcast and watch like the last couple minutes. They did like a little highlight reel of the show that you just watched. Again, like WrestleMania. Then it ended, like after the highlight reel, with a benediction from the female priest who is from the church that Trump posed with the Bible at after he cleared the streets with, tear gassing the protesters. So it's kind of another, hey Trump, here's another person that doesn't like you. You tried to do a photo op and she's here to spoil your photo op. And it's really easy to find plenty of people who are no longer in favor of Trump, or who have been, crossed by Trump. I look forward to the next 2 nights to see who else they trot out. At this point, I wouldn't be surprised if they had Stormy Daniels as one of the speakers. Just reminding us that he's not exactly the epitome of fidelity, our president, our pussy grabber in chief. Anyways, you got my feelings about it. Let me stew a little bit on what happened with the delegate counts. I might want to do like a whole deep dive into it, because I've only looked at Colorado and California's numbers, and so far it's just wrong. This is not what democracy looks like.